Episode 20, Mark Grain, Part 2.
And wrangling your engineers as well, don't let them take the piss, so
Which they were particularly good at.
oh
They
yeah.
were spot. I was spot on with taking the piss.
I've noticed some Olympic standard piss taking engineers.
Welcome to the Two Mechanics Podcast. Kenny Handkammer and Mark Grain have 18 Formula One World Championships between them, have been in the Guinness Book of World Records twice. They have over 30 years of motorsport stories between them, not to mention the 40,000 beers. Cheers. What you say?
Hello, everybody. And I bet you're wondering where the other Herbert is. Well, unfortunately, Kenny can't be with us this week, but don't worry, we've got it covered. You maybe remember that earlier in the podcast series that we introduced you to our careers and did the first part of each one of us. So today you're going to get the second part of my career and a little bit more background into how I'm here today to be able to talk to you about all things motorsport. Kenny will be back with us in the next episode for sure. And there's plenty to talk about, even though there's no Grand Prix racing. We've got IndyCar and IMSA over in Long Beach. We've got the first round of the British Touring Car Championship to speak about. There's been WEC in Imola and GT racing in the Nürburgring. And last but not least, fantastic racing from Goodwood at the members meeting. So plenty to talk about when Ken's back, but hopefully you enjoy the second part of my career. And yeah, don't forget that you can pick up the podcasts on all the platforms. All these podcasts are available on all the different podcast platforms. So please keep listening, please keep watching, and please keep sending us a feedback. It's really appreciated. Hope you enjoy, and see you soon.
So, Mark, what are we saying?
Ken, what are we saying?
I think it was a couple of episodes ago we talked about each other's career, and we got about halfway through yours because it's been very long.
That's because I'm old. Yeah,
aren't we all? Aren't we all? So, should we just have a bit of a recap of where we ended up? And
well,
we got to like the 2000s, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, I love talking about myself, so
Yeah,
I'm more than happy, Ken. I'm more than happy, Kenneth, to pick this back up. So yeah,
nobody can do it better than you.
So yeah, well, where we finished up is coming to the end of the Formula 3000 with McLaren, and people might have noticed.
Yes.
I did actually put something out there on Insta, which is a bit of an article, some snaps from the old McLaren magazine, and just there. And yeah, well, in 3000, I noticed that we went away and we ran a test for ourselves, just by ourselves, no support from anybody from Gibson, the engine people, or anybody like that. And I noticed that we had a bit of a gap in our skill sets where we're only tiny teams, so we haven't got dedicated electrician or anything like that, Sparky for cars. So right. I put myself forward for some training for that, and a bit of how we do the extra logging stuff on the cars. It's not allowed for racing, but for your own private testing, you get these channels that you could use. So I went down to the McLaren Formula One harness shop and got a bit of training there and some stuff in that world. And then when the Formula 3000 team was coming to an end, and we were being offered different positions within McLaren Formula One, I pushed for a job in R&D and data acquisition. And right. That training that I got in 3000 stood me in good stead, because that meant I could kind of roll straight into that. And yes, there was a ton of stuff to learn, and it was all bigger and much more complex, but at least I had a good grounding in it. I had some basis to move into that. So I did that, and that, yeah.
I think the thing about that is you were actually, stayed on with McLaren, and they didn't let you all go, which would, back then would be quite easy for them to say, okay, right, thanks for your work, and off you go. So for them to, gamely employ, pick up the people from the team and offer them jobs, which just shows you what a great team McLaren was for looking after people.
No, it's a very good point, and one that I did consider at the time, but I haven't thought about in years. So to your point, Kenny, it's a really good point, and that was Ron and Ron's whole like sort of ethics and ethos, and he just didn't like to see. He didn't want to let people go, but he didn't want to see people leave the team. You know, he didn't want to see people resign. That's kind of how Ron was. So yeah, got a lot to thank him for from that point of view. And yeah, back in Formula One. So back working on projects back at the factory, but of course supporting track tests as well and supporting the test team with these different R&D projects on the cars, but also, like I said, moving into data acquisition and so on, and starting to look a little bit more at car performance and reliability, that sort of stuff, and how these projects help engineering teams to
Well, that's kind of
understand aero
effectively,
balances better and all that sort of stuff. You know, very wide
yeah,
ranging.
that's kind of almost like what we would call trackside performance engineer. In fact, you almost jumped up to an engineering position.
Well, it was definitely R&D engineering, because you were working with design engineers to come up with how you would install these extra projects on a car that's not designed to take these extra rakes, or these, you know,
Yeah,
different load cells in different positions, and thermocouples to measure all these different characteristics of the car and what was going on in certain areas. So there was definitely that with it. It wasn't just a, you know, turn up, plug A into B, you know, and blah blah. There was a lot of thought with it, and a lot of input, which I don't know whether that still exists to this day. I really don't. Obviously, quite a while now out of Formula One, but certainly in those days,
they still use the rakes, don't they? The aero rakes
they do, yeah.
testing, and they are.
Yeah.
We know what a challenge they are. They're a complete pain in the ass.
Yeah. I
Whole
mean,
installation and everything. Yeah.
it's yeah, quite funny, because I moved from that role into this role started me working with a legend in Formula One. People use that word a lot, legend, but honestly, Indy Lau, who'd been with McLaren for years and was
Yeah,
testing team manager. Yeah, I mean, what a great guy. I mean, a really close friend of mine. But Indy as test team manager needed a chief mechanic, and because of the R&D work I'd done, being trackside, working with Indy, him and I spoke about it, and I was keen to apply for that role, and Indy was really keen for me to do similar, start working with him day to day rather than just shall we say, infrequently. So I went to see Dave.
He's retired now, isn't he, Indy? Is Indy retired?
He's not retired. No, he's
No?
been for many years. He's been looking after all the heritage collection and so on.
Right.
And actually, I could come on to it in a little bit. But Indy and I started to work again together later on, back sort of around 2017, something like that. Indy and I started to work together again quite closely. So I went along to see Dave Ryan, who again just a long-standing employee of McLaren, one of Ron's trusted right-hand men. Really tough guy to work for, but a very good guy to work for. You always knew where you stood with Dave, and he demanded a lot of you, and he demanded very high standards. And
I know, yeah.
I mean that was it. His nickname's Von Ryan. And actually, after Dave left McLaren, he set up his own racing team, and he called it Von Ryan Racing. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, him and Nigel Stepney were very similar, and they worked together, didn't they, back in the old days?
I can't remember if they did or not, but
I think they might have
both
even
very
been
similar,
Shadow
both
or
very
somewhere like
demanding.
that.
Yeah, ball breakers, but
Yep.
but they made you better because of it.
100%.
You were a better race car mechanic, you were a better trucker, you were a better whatever. You were better because you worked for Dave or Nigel, because they made you raise your game. They made you bash in those high
100%,
standards.
yeah.
So I went to see Dave and sat down in his office, and that was always terrifying. I've got to say, sometimes.
Yeah,
And anyway,
what do you want?
yeah. I'm pleased to say that we I don't want to even call it an interview. It was a conversation, and he said, "Right, I'm going to give you a go. I'm going to give you a shot. Don't fuck it up." That kind of deal.
Yeah.
So no pressure.
No pressure. Just don't fuck it up.
Yeah. And that was it. It started as test team chief mechanic. And in those days, it was that it was a 2-car team and quite a big undertaking, and all separate completely to the race team, and no limits on testing as well. So you were away
Oh, it's
for,
terrifying.
oh man,
And the hours are just horrific, weren't they? Because there's none of this down tools. We're going back to the hotel, boys, and finish it up in the morning. It was from early morning till
night
2,
shift.
3, 4 a.m. every day.
Yeah. Again, kind of going back to what I was saying about Dave. The thing is, it really tested you. All right, I know it's a test team, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking as an individual. It really challenged. You found out what you were made of, I think, and I know so many people who worked on test teams in that environment and all the rest of it, and you had to be on the ball, and you had to be able to operate with limited sleep, and you still had to push and get the car out, and if you're turning you had a test program that you had to conclude, so you couldn't just stroke it. You couldn't just be there. Oh, we're not racing, so it doesn't matter. It wasn't like that at all. You spent all that money flying all of this team out there, renting the circuit, the whole bit. You had to be on it, and you had to be out there executing well on your test program. So that was that was. And of course, this is that chief mechanic role, as well. Ken, in Formula One, that's a man management role. Very simple. You're coordinating different elements of your team. Whether it's your fabricator, your mechanics, and the car crews, your truckies and tyres and fuel and all of that. And wrangling your engineers as well. Don't let them take the piss. So
Which they were particularly good at.
Oh.
They were spot on with taking the piss.
I've noticed some Olympic standard piss taking engineers. Honestly, I've worked with some. Anyway, that's probably for another day.
And then you also had to put up with the test team, race team banter, right? There was always the fucking test teams let us down, and went because.
And in those days, for everybody listening, it's not like we were awash with parts. So you'd often be transferring parts between the race team and the test team, and it was always, we'd do a test, we'd test a new part, we'd send it back, it'd get serviced, and then it'd go out, or it might get transferred. If it was transferred straight from a test straight to a race, and then you'd always go, oh, test team fucking sent this, and it's fucking mess. Well, it's not, is it? It wasn't. And then, of course, the reverse had happened. We'd turn up at a test, and we'd wait for the race transfers to arrive. Again, it might be front wing or whatever it might be. And it'd rock up, and then blokes, the travelling spares guy testing is unwrapping it, and then the next thing I'd hear from him is, look at this, grainy, look at this, I'm not having it. Look at the shit state that they've sent this in. I'm like, oh Christ, yeah, okay, all right. So
it went both ways, definitely.
Oh, didn't it just? Yeah, I don't miss that. So yeah, that was that. So man management and to your point, it wasn't just within your team; it was how your team interacted with their race team colleagues, but also the people back at the factory, the whole bit, and how all that worked, and how you try to get it all done under challenging circumstances. But again, big learning. That and the way I was working, Neil Oatley used to run this. He used to run this program, this list of priorities for the whole of McLaren racing, and what they got an engineering team that wanted to make certain elements of the car better, and so on. And so Neil would collate all of these things. He'd come up with a single list, and so that was my first real time of working closely with Neil Oatley and making sure that his priorities for testing got onto the car and got done. And I mentioned him often because he's beginning a big influence on my career. Dave Redding, now team manager at Williams, and I was working. Dave was on the race team at that time, and he would come testing. He was one of the lucky ones who'd do racing and testing. How about that?
Yes.
So, and Dave and I would work on those priorities for Neil Oatley, and that worked well with myself and Dave, and it was towards the end of 2008, and I started to do some races, and including being in Brazil, right, with the which is where Lewis won the championship. That famous last lap overtake to finish fifth, and so yeah, that was.
Which are all talking about now, and Massa's going to court and all that.
Of course, yes, he is. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the guy's hoping to gain from that. I mean, is it loss of earnings he's talking about, or what? But I mean,
I don't know. He's definitely got a loss of hair. But just going back to Dave Redding. So Dave Redding and I started at Benetton about a month apart on the test team on the active car.
Ah, yes, yeah.
So that was in 1989. So I've known Dave a very long time. We basically. And then we went both on the following year. We both went on to Nannini's race car together, and he, and working with Max. So, yeah, Dave's a tremendous bloke, and he's still doing it now.
He is, yeah. I don't know where he finds the energy, but yeah. Team manager at Williams, and I know what the influence he's had there, in
he knows how to call a spade, that's for sure.
yeah, always very direct. Yeah. Mark, what the fuck are we? What the fuck are we doing here, Mark? Are we going to get the car finished and get out of it, or what, or not? What's happening? All right.
Yeah, if I wanted your opinion, I'd ask for it.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, well, After that 2008 championship win with Lewis out in Brazil, and again, working closely with Dave at that race. That's when.
What an experience, eh?
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
That's when it was shortly after that, after we got back to the UK, that he spoke to me, and he said, "Look, myself and Dave Ryan would like you to come onto the race team full time," and so I was like, "Yeah, great, I'm up for that." And that was in a sort of.
So that's 2009, is it now?
Yeah. Yeah, and that was when it was a Stoinker of a car. It was hideous, but it was good. Going back racing again after not been racing since the last days of racing with Formula 3000. So that was cool because that was like a championship win, and then going how it kicked off, and then coming back with Lewis.
Going out with number one on the car was nice.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah,
and so there was like the kind of technical coordinator role come chief mechanic. There was Pete Vale, who was chief mechanic as well. So you can't really have two chief mechanics, but what we were doing is splitting up some of that responsibility and making sure going back to those priorities I was talking about from Neil Oatley, it was just making sure that those are carried through all the way to racing. So that was predominantly my role there.
That was Taffy, wasn't it, the chief mechanic?
Taffy was number one on Lewis's car. Paul James, for people listening. Taffy.
And I worked with Taffy in 1989 or 1990.
Yeah, in Benetton.
He was my gearbox guy on the car.
He was indeed. I remember Paul being there. Yeah. He for people who don't know Paul, he's from Wales. You see, near to Pembrey, actually, Llanelli, and yeah, he's got a very distinctive voice, and I can never ever think about Paul without doing a very bad Paul impression. But a great guy, fantastic. Yeah. I've known him for so many years. But Paul was Paul ran Lewis's car in through that period, from 2007, Lewis's first year. Paul ran the car, and into 2008 with a championship win, and onwards from there. And the chief mechanic, like I say, was an Australian guy called Pete Vale, who's Australian these days. Yeah, Pete was around for years, and he was at Lotus before he came to McLaren. So it was a kind of a split of the chief mechanic role, but more of this technical coordinator I was speaking about, and just making sure that Neil Oatley's stuff got carried through, and that lifted a bit of the burden on Dave Redding. Oh, we should tell people that Dave is widely known as Otis for obvious reasons, Otis Redding. So
and he came from Reading.
And he did, yes, from the place.
He lived in Reading, and his name was Dave Redding. So there you go.
And yeah, so that lifted a bit of the burden from Otis, put it on my shoulders, and that was it. So I was racing again. 2009 and was a challenge because it was a stoinker of a car. It was a KERS car, so it was one of the first ever KERS car for in the regulations, but also for McLaren. And yeah, that had a lot of
They were
challenges.
challenging. They were challenging, weren't they? Because of,
Oh, it was all new aero regs as well that year, if you remember, Ken. It was so it was a bit of a shake-up in many regards, and some teams decided to, because it was optional. You could either design a KERS car, or you didn't have to. McLaren did. We turned that car into a winner. It was overweight at the start of the year, predominantly because of the KERS system.
I think they all were.
Yeah, and
I don't think it was a car that met the weight of a KERS vehicle.
so I remember a very distinct figure. We took 10 kilos out of that car over that year and turned it from a poor car, very poor car, into a
That's a
car
lot.
that could win
10
races.
kilos.
Yeah.
That's unheard of.
I don't know if you could ever do that now in Grand Prix racing. I'm really not sure, but we managed it that year. We went over everything. A fellow again we've spoken about on different podcasts is Pat Fry, and Pat was lead engineer on that car. And Pat, I remember took a car back from a race, from a European race, without touching it, and we stripped it at the factory, and we cut off every tie wrap and put them all in a bin and weighed them. We weighed absolutely every element of the car,
Yeah.
and then that led to being more diligent and uniform car assembly. I mean, we were by 2009, everybody should be aware that really, every car that was built was pretty much identical, right? Tiny differences, but we even managed to iron those out. So the assembly process was so uniform. And whilst that might sound a little bit boring, and I remember older mechanics at the time were going, well, I like to do it like this, and yeah,
Yeah.
well, maybe you do, but that's but if you do it like that and then the other car doesn't, and the other car stops because they didn't use your little trick, what point is there in that?
Exactly.
Breed 100% reliability and uniformity and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, so that's what that was all
Exactly. And
about.
the other reason you could do that is because we had an unlimited budget. We know that saving weight costs an absolute fortune,
Oh man.
right?
Yeah.
The money you throw at it, and looking into different, more exotic materials, and all that type of stuff. It is just, it's just a pit for cash for sure.
So all of this different this experience of working with Dave, working with Neil Oatley and so on, and that working tightly with the factory and carrying that, making sure that the factory were well informed, making sure that the race team were well informed, because by this time test teams had been banned, we should say.
Yeah.
2009 they weren't allowed anymore. So at the end of 2010 there was an opportunity. Trying to think of his role, chief operating officer, I think it was his role, a fellow called Simon Roberts, who went on to be team principal at Williams. Simon and Dave had spoken to me and said they were interested in setting up a new group at MTC, which a factory-based role within the McLaren Technologies, the famous
Right.
circular building, right? So they wanted to merge different, rather than have a little sub-assembly and then a car build and then kind of all these different smaller elements.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how about if you pull those all together, then you start to improve the workflow and so on, and it was offered to me, and I was like, yeah, okay, that sounds interesting. It's factory. Am I interested in factory? But what they did, they for them it was offering me a proper defined career path, because they supported it with different recognized qualifications in management and operations. So
Right.
so I went back. So I went back in to set up this new group.
You have bounced around, haven't you?
You
Like a
know,
fucking yo-yo.
I get bored. You know what it's like. So I came back into factory and started to do these qualifications at Kingston Uni. So and all of a sudden I started to see the light. Right, this is a proper, like I say, career path. This like these clear objectives now, and that was similar across McLaren. I would say that all of a sudden they were starting to recognise that this is how you'll turn into a better team if you start to develop your people a lot more. You know, so
Yeah.
I was up for that. I set up this group and got that done, and got those first level of qualifications done. And that's when this does sound like it's bouncing around a lot, but at the time it was really logical. You got to trust me.
Well, it is. Well, it is. It's not because it sounds like it, it's because it is.
Well, the following year I went back racing in a reliability engineering role.
Did you get bored, Mark?
It was nice to come back. It was nice to come back, getting on the plane and going to Australia in 2012. I remember that was, but the winter testing that year. Come on, man, that was hard. Again, we cobbled together a bit of a test team like every team in the pit lane did, and that was using people that I'd been working with, in this new group that I'd set up. So yeah, I went back racing, reliability engineering. That was cool. Another string to the bow. To
Yeah, it's a big job. Big job.
Yeah, the equivalent for you
So
at
a
the
high
time,
pressure
Kenny,
job that
was
is. You know,
Daza.
if something fails, you're in firing line.
Yeah, and it's about how you document it correctly, and it's about how
Yeah.
you can't you've got to get it fixed trackside for
Yeah.
sure. You've got to use all your people, your engineering team, your fabricators, your mechanics, whatever. You've got to get all that done properly, but you've got to get it documented, and and that documentation, it takes form of photographs and a trackside report, and all that's got to be done and sent back as fast as
Yeah.
possible. So all of the design engineering team back at Woking, or the F1 bases, they can kick in, and you've sent them all the information, so they're coming up with fixes. Especially at the start of the season, if you think you go from Australia straight on to Malaysia, and I do remember we at McLaren had a clever fix to a clever design with the front of the floor, the leading edge of the plank, and we were challenged. We were challenged in Australia. We finished first and second, I think, from memory, and then we were challenged with plank wear at the front and skid wear, metallic skids, and we took it all off. We measured it. We were legal, and Charlie turned around to us and said, "Yeah, that's great. Don't want to see it in Malaysia." And so you're in Australia. You're flying to Malaysia. You've got, I think it was only a week in between the races. I don't think we certainly didn't come back. I know we went straight to Malaysia. I don't think it was 2 week gap. I think it was only a week.
No, it wasn't. It was a week.
Well, and then so we had to get send all that information back, get something made as fast as possible, and get it sent out to Malaysia, so we can get it on for the turnaround, start to get it all fitted up on a Wednesday and a Thursday to make sure it all fitted, and then run it on the Friday P1, because you're at risk of getting thrown out.
Yeah, it's untested as well, right?
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, those practice sessions were. That's when. So that was, yeah, that was all. Adventure.
Charlie Whiting was quite good at pulling out those challenges. Like you could argue to your blue in the face that it was legal and there was a bit of a loophole, but he would just say, "Okay, I'll give you benefit of doubt, but you don't want to see it again."
Absolutely.
He was very fair. It was very fair. He was very straightforward.
Always very fair. Very fair with every team. There was never any bias for Charlie, and you knew when you were if you were given a break like that, like we were that time, and it wasn't because he bent the rules. It was like, no, see what it is, but get it off the car. Right. Okay.
Greatly missed.
No,
Charlie.
absolutely. You'd get that one race, and then somebody else would get another race.
Yeah.
You knew
Oh,
it
yeah.
went on, and that was fair enough. Absolutely. So
Yeah. Part and parcel.
yeah. Um, so that was 2012, and then again the Simon came back to me and he said the group that I put in place was working well, and Paul James we spoken about earlier, Taff. Paul had
Yeah.
actually come off the race team, and he played a part in taking over some of that work, as so had Pete Vale, the other guy I was talking about. The objective there was for them to spend some time working in the factory, so they were sympathetic to what the factory were doing and what they had to offer. And then they were going back racing in 2013, and so I came back off the race team. And so,
Again.
yes, and this was too. Simon has spoken to me. He said it's worked well what you put in place. We'd like you to expand it. So I was like, okay, all right. And so he got me to have a think about it, what it could look like, and how we brought into this group, like the gearbox shop and so on, and different aspects of suspension servicing and all sorts of different elements. And so it became rather than a group, it became its own proper function. So like there's the manufacturing function at McLaren, and this was the build and test function. And pretty much by and large that system and that group exists today as it did when I put it together back in
Wow.
2013. It's been tweaked along the way, but yeah, but that's what it is, and it's a large function, and the role expanded. My role expanded at that point then, and I was to be reporting into Simon, and I'll say the chief operating officer at the time, and
Wow.
yeah, I look back on that with great satisfaction, and how we changed the way that things were working, and how the flow of servicing and work, getting everything done in a timely fashion and proven out. So you were handing over best best service, best signed off
Yeah.
car components and everything back to the race team. That was the objective, and
Yeah.
also being that link between a manufacturing function, who that these manufacturing functions will tell you that they're not tracks hardened, battle weary uh, racing car people. They are there making parts, and
Yeah.
it's about getting all of that done, and how we got that in a better state from taking parts from them, getting parts assembled, and getting them to the race team in a timely fashion. So you weren't trackside and then waiting for parts, especially when curfews came in, because then
Yeah.
you can't afford to do it. With the curfews, it's a sporting penalty. You can't break the curfew. So every Formula One
So
team.
are you saying that at no point in that career that you ever took anything back to the hotel room to finish it off? And I'm not saying that I had been involved in any of that at all at any stage, but I'm just saying it was potentially an option.
I think that was more of a Milton Keynes Red Bull option than it was.
Well, I don't believe anybody had 3D printers in their hotel rooms.
No, this is true. No. So, and then then a bit of stability, you'll be pleased to hear. So I stayed looking after that. That was function head for this function, this test and build function, and it's around that time that Zach joined, and so I remember and I was started. Heritage came, and this is where I started to work back with India again. Heritage then got joined up with this function, so that we could work on the heritage cars more efficiently, and so on. So, and again, this is before the demarcation that exists these days, where Formula One heritage department has to operate separately from a Formula One race team in modern Formula One. But in
Yeah, and
those
I can
days,
imagine how, from my experience, heritage cars with parts everywhere in different boxes and different specs and stuff just strewn
yeah.
everywhere.
So
And it
so
takes a lot to get that in back into the right era to the right spec. Exactly the same spec. You'd go back and have a look at the spec of or even the setup sheet, so how it finished its last race, to then backtrack all the correct parts for it. It's quite a task.
so there was India had done a pretty good job, but absolutely, you're absolutely right, Ken, and that was part of the logic and trying to get Indy more support to get that monster task done. But also, McLaren had started around 2017. McLaren had started to restore a lot of the cars, and cars that had just been sitting for years and years without any work and kind of degraded a lot. Plus, Ron had left by this time, and part of Ron's divorce deal, whatever you want to call it, severance, was Ron was going to be. He was 10 cars were in the deal for when Ron left McLaren. So those cars had to be fully restored and turned, had to be fired up and so on and properly.
Does Ron have those somewhere now, or are they still in the
I don't know what
factory?
he's done with them. He had. I know he built a place. He's got this James Bond villain lair out in Henley, hasn't he? And
Yeah.
I know he had I think it was like an all glass garage thing built with them all on display. But I don't know. I don't know whether he sold any now or not. But they were quite varied. But all through Ron's period, and of course, race winning cars with a lot of pedigree. So.
I'm sure there's one of Senna's in there somewhere.
Oh yeah, there was. I can't think off the top of my head now what they all were, but they were all really nice cars. And I think one of them, for example, it might have been Jensen's winner from Canada, in 2010. I can't
Yeah.
remember, but they were all like with proper pedigree. They weren't,
Yeah.
they weren't just an '89 car that all ever it did was testing.
Yeah. Yeah.
They all had proper heritage and proper pedigree.
Yeah.
So that was a task that had to be done. There was a timeline with that, and there was obviously, you think about the amount of lawyers that would have been involved in all of that divorce deal, a whole lot. So that needed to be executed on efficiently and on time and just making sure that Indy had the right support and we could count on sub-assembly to help
Yeah.
out. And again, before the regulations that mean that you can't do any of this stuff these days, but in those days you could. So that was that. But also Zach came along and so I was for what small kind of test team that did exist at that time. I was team manager for that as well as another one of the hats I wore at that time. And Zach came along and said, "Well, I got this kid, it's Lando Norris." I said, "Yeah, I know Lando. He works. He drives for a friend of mine, Trev Carlin." He says, "Yeah." So Lando was doing Formula 3 with Trevor, and Zach said, "Well, I want you to organise a test. Let's go. I'll put him in a car. Put him in. What car can we use?" And I said, "Oh, I've got one of these cars. All these cars that we're restoring." And getting back up to speed. Let's put him in one of them. Yeah, cool. So I think that was would that be 2017 maybe? I think so. We went to Portimao in Portugal, and
That's 9 years ago.
yeah, and ran Lando in his first Formula One test. So
Wow.
and winding back a bit. I was chief mechanic on the test team when Lewis first drove a Formula One car as well. So quite, I'm very. They're two personal milestones. I'm really, really quite proud about that. I was
Yeah.
Chief Bolt when Lewis first drove a Formula One car, and I was team manager when Lando first drove a Formula One car. So
Nice.
two British world champions. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Very good.
yeah, and then did all that, and again that all went well, and it got to 2000 and end of 2018, 2019, and that's when Zach came along and said, "Look, I want to get involved in stuff outside of just Formula One. I want to do lots of different things, and the regulations governing Formula One were changing so that heritage couldn't be part of your Formula One team. It had to be separated out, and that was all baked into the regulations. So yeah, he came on. He gave me the opportunity to head up all of that different thing. We were getting involved in IndyCar. A
Yeah,
relationship with a team that obviously McLaren went on to buy, but the Heritage, Extreme E came along, and different speculative programs as well. I did a load of work on with WEC, and by this time, I'm reporting directly into Zach, and yeah, back out at Formula One, but super interesting looking at different types of racing and how different types of racing work, and budget control, and
yeah,
more
big,
that
big,
that
big
you know
stuff.
that's yeah, that strategic stuff. So
Putting,
that was
putting budgets together and all those types of things. It's something
yeah.
that you have to learn, right? It's
No,
we come
this is
from being
it.
mechanics and we end up in management roles, and
Well,
a lot of it's influences that you've worked with along the way, and what you've picked up and used
that's
efficiently.
it, and it's knowing all those. You're working with people, and you develop. Now you're starting to develop people who are working for you, like you were given the opportunity to develop. You're doing the same for other people. There's um, when I set up the McLaren Extreme E team, I took a guy off the Formula One team, a fellow called Mark Cox, who's he's now at Aston Martin as chief mechanic over there.
Right.
He came from being number one mechanic. I knew he was capable of it. Putting him into the chief mechanic and team manager role in Extreme E, because the Extreme E teams are tiny, right?
Yeah.
And
But you still
getting
get
into
to
the
learn all those things about
oh,
budgets and communication, logistics, all of those things that you pick up. And I think being in a situation positions that we've both been in, it allows you to see people grow and give people opportunities, which is lovely because we were given opportunities and we
that's the
executed.
thing.
And to see people, I do it today. I promote people, and I'm sure you do as well. And to get them in better positions and get them into management positions, etc. And it's lovely to just nurture them along, help them. Still let them do their own things because you can't micromanage anybody, right? Because that's not how you should do anything. But it's just lovely to see them grow, and you're there for them to rely on if they need you for anything.
I think that it's interesting what you're saying there. It's just made me realise what when I was talking earlier on about Von Ryan, Dave Ryan, and Indy. They they did both let me make mistakes, right? Without tearing me a new arsehole. If it was a proper fuck up, then I was for the high jump. But I'm pleased to say I can't think of anyone that was a real proper one. I know Dave always had a bad back, and sometimes he'd get off a long haul flight and he'd come into the factory and he was all growly and grisly, but because his back was killing him. But
Yeah, we've all been like that.
well, yeah, very true, yeah. Um,
Straight off the plane and straight into the office.
oh,
I mean, what was that all about? That was
miserable,
so unnecessary as well.
absolutely
It
miserable.
was just a thing. It was just an F1 thing, but totally unnecessary because you get so much more if you let the blokes go home, sleep, and come back, and they're so
Oh
much more
god.
productive.
So, but yeah, that I appreciate that they let me make mistakes. What do you think of this? Well, yeah, try it. Well, if you want to do it like that, give it a go. All right. Oh. So, again, kind of just goes back to the those guys, and that period of McLaren it was a very it was all in the style of Ron and in the image of Ron, and Ron's absolutely impeccable high standards.
Yeah, I mean, you work with some extremely professional people.
Oh,
I like to
just
think we've all had those opportunities. Uh, Yeah.
I remember. I just. I've got one story to tell you. It was when I was running the car build process, and I really can't remember what year it would have been, but let's say it was around 2013, I think. And and Ron had a period where he wasn't involved in the Formula One team, certainly not day to day, and he wasn't even then, but he was getting a little more back involved, and it was, I don't know, whatever. It was a weekend again. It was a
Yeah.
weekend again. Car build,
No.
endless weekend work. You're in every day for God knows how long. And he came in. He said, "You all right?" And I looked at. Well, first of all, I looked across and I thought, "Fuck, there's Ron." Very rarely saw him, and he was
Yeah.
in on the workshop floor in Formula One shop. And all right, Ron. All right. Um, what's happening with this? Whatever. He asked me, and I was like, "Bang, bang, bang." He's like, "Okay." And when are you doing this? I'm doing it there. Dang, 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 dang. Right, okay. Have you considered this? Yes, I have. What are you going to do if that happens? I'm going to do this, this, and this. Huh. And it was like,
He just left you alone.
yeah. Well, then he said, and it was. He looked at me effectively like, this fella seems to know his shit. So,
Yeah.
so then he
And,
looked around.
and he's also in at the weekend, so he's obviously.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So then he looked around and he said, "Where's everybody else?" I said, "Well, I've got all my boys here. That we were doing this. There's some assembly. The gearbox shop are over there doing that. He said, "Yeah, I can see all of that. I'm not asking you that. Where is everybody else?"
The rest of the company, yeah.
And I thought, I know what he's getting at. It's like, where's the people in the inspection department? Where are the people in the machine shop? Where, all of that. And I was like, well, they don't work for me. I mean, and it was a very awkward situation.
All hell went loose on Monday morning, I expect.
And so, well, the fellow who was like sporting director at the time was Sam Michael. And
I know, Sam.
yeah, and so I was like, well, they don't work for me, Ron. And he went, yeah, I'm asking you a question. And I was like, I can't dodge this anymore. I said, it would be good if we had more people in the different departments helping us out on a Sunday, for sure. Right. Okay. Off he phoned. About an hour later, Sam turned up. I said, oh, hello, Sam. He said, yep, hello, Mark. Right. Ron's phoned me up, so I've come to see you. I said, yeah, okay, mate, yeah. He's, whatever you need to get this car done and get it out on time, and whatever people you need in from whatever department from here on in, you ask us, or you tell us what you need on a Friday, and you'll get it. And I was like, wow, there you go.
That's good to have that support, isn't it?
Yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible. So, and it wasn't like I was getting bad service from the rest of the factory, but I knew how it could be better, So
Yeah, I know sometimes I've been in that similar situation, and sometimes you just feel a little bit lonely, if you know what I mean.
yeah, you're looking around and you're thinking, and it's also a morale thing for your boys, for your team,
Yeah.
If
Yeah,
they're all in and they're going, well,
where's everybody else?
why is it only us that's in? Where's everybody else? We're
Especially when they're waiting for something
together, aren't we?
They're waiting for something to come out of inspection or sub-assembly or
yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, that was one of my interactions with Ron. I got a lot of time and a lot of respect for Ron. Always. That's the same for Zach. I worked closely for Zach. I mean, I think I said, by the time I handed him the notes at McLaren, I was reporting directly into him, and I always had a good relationship, and I still do to this day. I saw him at Goodwood at the Festival of Speed.
Right.
Yeah, I sat down and had a coffee with him there.
I'm going to try and make it over for that if you're going. We should do it.
Yeah. I did the festival and the revival this year. Yeah, they're great.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And today, so you're extreme hydrogen, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There was an opportunity for me to move to America, and I know that you're having a wonderful time in the US, and you're out in that California coast, and a whole thing. I get it. You're having you're a lucky bastard, actually, is what you are.
I can't complain.
I had an opportunity to move out to the US to to Indianapolis, and be a permanent member of the IndyCar team's senior management. I was offered sporting director out there, and
Oh, wow.
and at my time of life and all the rest of it, it was just I'm not going to move. I'm not going to
And
upstick
I'm not being funny.
away from the UK. And
If it was a different location from Indianapolis, you probably would have looked at it a bit more seriously. But it's not ideal, is it?
no, I mean I know Indianapolis really well. I mean I worked on the IndyCar program for from 2019 through to 2023. So that involved quite a few trips backwards and forwards to
Oh
Indianapolis.
yeah, I mean we met, didn't we, randomly?
Yeah. I mean,
In a
that
lounge
time
in
Chicago,
Dallas.
because
Chicago, was it? Yeah. Or Dallas? I can't remember.
it was Chicago. So I always used to fly to Indianapolis via Chicago. You see, it was the smoothest route and good for the tier points and for everybody. So I mean, what are the chances of this for everybody listening? So I'm Chicago, transfer again in the business class lounge, and I look across and it's like, what are you doing here? And there was Ken.
Having a beer.
Well,
That's what I was doing.
So actually, if I remember, we decided then we had a glass of champagne and had a photograph taken.
Yeah. Yeah, that was pretty random, wasn't it?
That was very random. I don't know what the odds of that are, but
Yeah, I wish it was like lottery numbers. Right.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we're kind of at time, aren't we?
I could carry on for hours because
I know, because you do love your
it's my own
self-topic.
voice, my own career, how wonderful I
Me,
am.
fucking me.
But yeah, we'll give everybody a bit of a break. But so what we are going to follow up with is we're going to do second half of Kenny's career, which
The back end.
That shouldn't take too long. All right, a couple of minutes and we'll be done.
Because I'll tell you one thing for sure. I'm going to call you Zebedee for now. The amount of times you've bounced around. Unbelievable career. It's really impressive, Mark. You've worked with some excellent people, and just like I said in the first half, you've had the balls to take on different things, and sometimes they don't make sense at the time, sometimes they do, and you've always come back at the top again. So well done, mate.
Thank you very much, Ken, and thank you everybody for listening. And yeah, it's a Friday evening for me. I know it's Friday morning for you, so you've got your evening to come a bit later on. But it's it's time for me to hang up the microphone and go for that end of week first Friday evening beer. Okay. All right. We'll speak to you later. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.